Hi, everybody. Shabbat is not too far off, and yet I wanted to post a message here, try to be more face to face about it in regard to the excellent posts I saw on the discussion board. And I'm just going to make a few uh, remarks that I hope can be incorporated into this great start to the semester together. So the question of why bother being an observant Jew, however a person defines it, that Jason posted, if concepts like myth and primary and second naivete can hold true for all religions. So an answer is related to what Rabbi Gilman said, that when he does theology, he is doing it from an engaged place. That means he has an investment in the sandbox that is called Judaism, and he wants to get in and play in that sandbox, even though he also knows that he can step out of it at times, which means that it's true. Our ways of relating to God, how we believe that God relates to us, to the world, are not static. And that's also one of the things that Fowler's chart points out. And I think that Gardner's multiple intelligences can point us to that at different times in our lives, we find meaning or we struggle with our belief, with our faith, with our practices, with our spirituality. And so it's important to know that we don't have to stay stuck in a sort of negative way in one sandbox. For me personally, my commitment and involvement in Judaism from a religious and spiritual perspective is because I feel the breadth and the depth of the Jewish story, both mythic and historical, factual, and the believing stuff, even the stuff that troubles me, and we'll talk about that, especially in biblical, looking at biblical theology, is I want to be part of that story. I feel deeply invested in that story, and so that's why I practice and observe and daven from the Siddur, even when I struggle with it. And sometimes I don't feel like davening from the Siddur. Also, full disclosure, I also participate in a 12-step program where we are asked to really understand our images, our metaphors, our beliefs about God. And the 12-step program and my Judaism sort of sometimes I try to figure out how to integrate them so that each one helps me in my life as a human being. Rabbi Gilman always said that theology is an existential discipline. It deals with what is important deeply to my life. So, and how I feel about God, how I believe God feels about me, because nobody can ever know with certainty what, who, how God is, does, acts. We've inherited a tradition that teaches us what our ancestors have believed. However, these feelings, these beliefs, these intuitions, these existential states will affect how I relate to God, how I relate to the world. And so that's very important for us to keep in mind. As for how do we teach this, this is going to be a big part of our conversations, because the nature, for example, of Torah is very much driven by a story that feels like it's historical in the sense of 19th century historicity. And so especially for children, a historical consciousness doesn't really develop until you're about 11, 12 years old. It's a little bit like being able to do abstract mathematics. And then if a lot of people get stuck, they don't continue their education beyond that. And so they have difficulties when it comes to theology later on. To be continued. Shabbat Shalom. And we'll see each other next week as well.